25 million American children. $250 million in tiny slices. And one of the richest men on earth writing a check that could reshape both philanthropy and politics in the United States. Michael and Susan Dell say they're giving away $6.25 billion to help fund President Donald Trump's new Trump accounts for kids. But is this a revolution in opportunity, or a massive experiment in political branding with children's futures on the line? Let's break it down. On a single Tuesday in December, the Dell family made one of the largest private commitments to American children in modern history. A $6.25 billion pledge to create around 25 million additional Trump accounts. Each of those accounts will start with a $250 contribution for a child who otherwise wouldn't qualify for the new federal program. Michael Dell, the billionaire founder and CEO of Dell Technologies, currently ranks around 11th on the list of the world's richest people, with an estimated net worth of about $148 billion. For context, this one pledge alone is more than double what the Michael and Susan Dell Foundation has previously given in total, which was already about $2.9 billion over the years. To understand why this donation matters, you first have to understand what Trump accounts actually are. Officially branded under the Invest America program, these are government-backed investment accounts for children, created as part of a major tax and spending package passed under President Donald Trump's second-term economic agenda. Here's how it works. Under the law, babies born during a defined window in Trump's second term are supposed to receive a $1,000 government-funded deposit into an investment account at birth. The accounts are administered through the U.S. Treasury but managed by private financial firms, and the money is meant to grow over time and eventually help pay for big life milestones, like education, buying a first home, or starting a business, once the child reaches adulthood. But there was a problem. Millions of kids alive today weren't going to get anything from the new federal program because they were born before the cutoff. That's the gap the Dells are trying to fill. Their $6.25 billion will go into the same type of accounts, but directed at children who are currently about 10 years old or younger and who were born before the Trump account's eligibility date. According to Invest America, the non-profit partnering on this effort, the Dell donation is expected to reach nearly 80% of U.S. children aged 10 and under across roughly three-quarters of American ZIP codes. Each eligible child will see $250 deposited into a Trump account in their name, with a focus on areas where the median household income is under about $150,000. So what does this mean for parents watching at home? Eligibility isn't universal, and it isn't automatic. The Dell-funded accounts are aimed at kids 10 and under who missed out on the $1,000 federal newborn grant because of their birth date and who live in qualifying zip codes. Parents will have to sign up and claim these accounts once the program fully launches. The money itself won't be handed out as cash. Instead, it will sit in investment vehicles, typically broad, low-cost funds, where it can grow tax-advantaged until the child turns 18. At that point, families can use the funds for things like higher education, a home down payment, or starting a small business, depending on the final program rules. This isn't Michael Dell's first foray into big philanthropy. Through their foundation, Michael and Susan Dell have already committed billions towards scholarships, charter schools, and children's hospitals, including a major pediatric center in Austin, Texas. But this pledge stands out. It's not going to a single university or hospital. It's effectively going straight into the financial futures of tens of millions of individual kids. Dell has also emerged as one of the loudest corporate champions of Trump accounts. Earlier in the year, he joined President Trump and other CEOs, like leaders from Goldman Sachs and Uber, at an Invest in America roundtable at the White House, where Trump publicly credited Dell with helping to bring the idea to him. Dell even said his company would match the government's $1,000 contribution for the children of Dell Technologies employees, doubling the starting amount for those families. On paper, this looks like the textbook definition of generosity. A billionaire couple moves billions of dollars to help families save for their kids' futures. But the political context makes this story far more complex. These are Trump accounts, not just savings funds with a neutral label. The branding directly ties every statement from the Dell Foundation to the image and legacy of President Trump's economic agenda. The program itself was embedded in a major Republican-backed bill, and it now depends on both public policy and private money to function at scale. That raises a tough question for viewers. When a program for children is named after a sitting president and is then turbocharged by one of the world's richest business leaders, where exactly is the line between philanthropy, public policy, and political marketing? Supporters argue that this is precisely the kind of innovation the U.S. needs. For decades, economists have warned about the widening wealth gap, the rising cost of college, and the shrinking path to home ownership for younger generations. Seeded accounts, often called baby bonds in policy circles, are one of the few ideas that both anti-poverty advocates and some market-friendly conservatives have entertained. By putting real money into real investment accounts for children, advocates say you don't just lower the financial barrier to opportunity, you change family behavior. Parents may be more likely to save or to encourage long-term planning if there is already something there to build on. Dell himself has framed the initiative as a way to give kids the ability to envision a future worth saving for, arguing that this creates not just wealth, but hope and a sense of possibility. Critics, however, are not convinced. A $250 deposit, or even a $1,000 government seed for newborns, is unlikely on its own to close the wealth gap or fully fund a college education. Some analysts warn that without sustained contributions from families, philanthropy, or future governments, these accounts could end up as modest bonuses rather than transformative assets. Others are uneasy about the precedent. The Dell money flows through a treasury-run system but into privately managed accounts, blending the state, Wall Street, and billionaire donors in ways that make regulation and accountability more complicated. And because the program carries Trump's name, any future political backlash against the former president, or a change of administration, could put both funding and public support at risk. Zooming out, this story fits into a much larger global pattern. Around the world, governments are experimenting with asset-building tools for young people, from child trust schemes in the UK to long-term savings incentives in places like Singapore. At the same time, billionaire philanthropy is increasingly shaping public policy, from climate initiatives to pandemic response. The Dell-Trump Accounts partnership is a vivid example of that trend in the United States. An elected government puts forward a framework, but the scale and visibility come when a mega-donor steps in. For America's allies and rivals watching from the outside, it sends a clear signal about how the US is trying to handle inequality at home, by mixing state power, private capital, and political branding in a single project focused on the next generation for American families, though the immediate questions are much more practical. Am I eligible? How do I sign up? When will the website actually go live? Details are still rolling out, and enrollment processes will likely be phased in as the Treasury and private managers finalize the infrastructure for these accounts. Parents of children 10 and under living in qualifying zip codes will need to watch closely for official guidance on registering, verifying eligibility, and designating a parent or guardian to oversee the account. Meanwhile, babies born during the covered period of Trump's second term should, in theory, have their $1,000 federal seed deposited automatically once their birth is recorded, although families will still need to track and manage the account over time. In the end, Michael and Susan Dell's $6.25 billion pledge forces a conversation the country has struggled to have honestly. What do we owe the next generation? And who should decide how that help is delivered? Is this the future of public policy? Hybrid schemes where billionaires underwrite government-branded programs, or a risky blending of private power and political ambition? One thing is certain. Tens of millions of American children are now at the center of an unprecedented experiment in wealth building, politics, and philanthropy. Whether these Trump accounts become life-changing assets or symbolic gestures will depend on future contributions, market performance, and the choices those kids make when they finally come of age.